everybody. I'm Laura Trump coming to you from my home in New York, where we are all staying home to help do our part to fight back against coronavirus. As President Trump works and tries to address this crisis, the private sector is also playing a vital role. Joining me is a former restaurant CEO, Herman Cain. Thanks for joining me, Herman. Great to have you on.
My pleasure. Thank you, Laura.
And you're doing your part, social distancing. You're at home, I'm at home, but the show goes on, and we want to talk about what is happening right now in this country. Obviously, we are in unprecedented territory. We have never seen anything like this in our country, in the world. You were a former restaurant chain CEO. You understand business. Restaurants specifically have been incredibly hard hit by this crisis.
Right.
What advice would you give to CEOs of restaurants and other industries right now in the midst of this crisis?
First, cut your losses. You're not going to fool yourself by thinking that you will not incur some losses. So in this crisis situation, my first thing would be, how do you cut your losses? Secondly, that doesn't mean not paying your employees. I would pay my good employees so they would come back to work. And then you hunker down and see how long this is going to last. That's what smart CEOs do. They, one, cut their losses, and secondly, they try to make sure that they keep their better employees around by paying them. Yes, it's going to cost you some money. Yes, you're going to incur some losses, but it'll be better in the long run.
Well, the thing that I think has been really interesting to watch, Herman, has been the way the president isn't just using the government to try and help right now. Obviously, the government is doing a huge part of what we see happening out there with addressing this crisis. Right. But the president has also brought in the heads of major companies and asked for their support to help address the crisis. How critical is their support, and how do you think this can benefit America?
It's very critical, because if we look at our history, government cannot solve a crisis by itself. It takes the engagement of the private sector. So I think that the president's move to bring in private sector CEOs was an excellent idea, because it also says to people, this isn't just a government problem, it is a national problem. And so this crisis has to be shared, and many of the good solutions are going to come from the private sector. The government will pass legislation, increase regulations, and my greatest fear is that they're going to try to do too much. Get out of the way and let the private sector do what it does best, which is to solve problems.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, something else that I think we are all seeing every day, everybody is watching, they all have it on the corner of the screens, on every channel. The stock market, the Dow. I mean, obviously, it's going lower every day. We see it go up some, but ultimately, we've seen a lot of losses, as you would expect in a crisis situation like this. As a former regional Fed chairman, how do you think we can limit the economic fallout from this crisis? Obviously, we don't know how long it will ultimately last, but everybody is pretty aware that it's going to be a pretty hard hit to the economy.
Yes, it is. Let me first comment on the fact that when we have a crisis like this, which is unlike any other crisis we've ever had, what you see in the stock market, I call it volatility. We are so used to a very short volatility range that when we see this kind of volatility, because of all of the moving parts and because of all of the unknowns, people start to freak out. I wouldn't freak out. No, it's all part of the volatility. Now, to answer your question directly about what can the Federal Reserve do, the Federal Reserve can lower the interest rates as low as they can get it, which is the amount that they charge the banks. Then the banks would have to do something to help people. Banks can suspend mortgages because they got those low rates, whether that's 2 months or 3 months, whatever the case may be. So the Fed can't do anything directly, but they can do something indirectly by helping the banks and giving them some breathing room, and then encourage the banks to then do something to help people who might be struggling with their mortgages. That's how I believe that they can be a part of the solution and not just part of the problem.
Great advice. Well, let's hope they're paying attention to what you have to say. Well, I'm just curious, Herman. Obviously, you're an American, like the rest of us out there, and it seems like our day-to-day life has changed quite a bit in a very short period of time.
Yes.
What steps have you taken personally, or what are you doing differently in your day-to-day life to try and prevent the spread of coronavirus?
I wrote a commentary a couple of days ago, and the last statement in that commentary that's posted on my website: do what you can do. We can sanitize all of the areas in the home. We've done it. We can sanitize all of the areas in the office, which we have done. Focus on what you can do instead of freaking out over what you can't control. We can't control what's happening in the country. We can't control what's happening in the world. The president of the United States, President Trump, he's the one that has all of these experts around him, and that's a good thing. He has to worry about how he protects the country, but we can do what we can do. And probably, Laura, the biggest thing that I suggest to people all the time: don't panic. And unfortunately, too many people are panicking, and that's causing them to do some very irrational things that really doesn't make any sense at this point. So don't panic. That's what we can all do.
Great advice, Herman Cain. Well, listen, we appreciate you being with us virtually. Nobody's in the same room with anybody anymore, but we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. Stay safe, stay healthy, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Happy to be with you anytime, Laura. Thank you very much.
The private sector is playing a vital role in the fight against coronavirus. And President Trump is at the helm, and we know he's got our best interest at heart and is doing the right thing for this country. That's real news for today. If you'd like to get involved with Team Trump, go to donaldjtrump.com or text Trump to 88022. Thanks so much for joining us, everybody. Stay safe and healthy out there. We'll see you soon.